Hello, my name is Beth Shepherd. I'm an interdisciplinary artist working at the intersection of ecology, animal advocacy, and ecocritical art history. I would like to acknowledge with thanks and respect that I live, work, and continue to learn in Ottawa, Ontario, Canada on unceded Algonquin and Anishinaabe territory. More than ever, we need Indigenous knowledge to protect our land, water, and all living things. I would also like to thank ASIL for this opportunity to participate in the emergency conference as part of the public engagements panel. Art and art history are second careers for me. When I started along this path, I had a field of dreams naivete. To paraphrase, I believed paint it and they will come. I realize now it takes a lot of work to get one's art seen and discussed. For artists who advocate for social, ecological, or other political change, public engagement is the key to success. In this short talk, I will tell you about my fascination with the landscape genre of art and how my current body of work perturbs myths of idealized landscape and pristine nature to disrupt the illusion that everything is still okay here. I believe that two factors make it difficult for many people to acknowledge the seriousness and urgency of the current global climate and environmental crises. The first is realistic aesthetic filtration used by ecocritical art historian Alan Braddock to describe the selective artistic omission of details while retaining an illusion of truth. This drew him to conclude that representations of landscape and nature are always constructed based on the cultural values and assumptions of the era. The second is landscape amnesia, coined by scientist and author Jared M. Diamond to describe people's general perceptual failure to detect gradual changes over time, thereby failing to react to developing problems. By unmasking these tendencies, I suggest that art can bring climate change home by drawing attention to the realities of the slow but ongoing degradation of the local environment. First, let me situate myself and my work. I live in historic Britannia Village, a small corner of Ottawa, Ontario, the capital of Canada. It sits on a kind of isthmus surrounded by the Ottawa River with a public beach on one end and a nature conservancy on the other. Living in a cool temperate climate and far away from rising sea levels, climate change is not top of mind for most people in Ottawa. I was pretty cocky myself about our privileged position in a warming world until two major floods threatened our home, first in 2017 and then again in 2019. Increased risk of flooding and more extreme weather events are expected as Ottawa's climate becomes hotter and wetter. Although Ottawa fares better than many places in terms of changing climatic patterns, the municipality must also contend with typical problems of contemporary urbanism, including pollution, wastewater and solid waste management, and even the threat of radioactive waste contamination in its water supply. The pandemic has made me pause and think about where I live. It has strengthened my sense of responsibility for my local environment. The result is Problematized Shorelines, a body of work linked by location, time, and the common thread of landscape. In this work, I explore the interconnectivity between the land and the water, the local and the faraway, and the visible and the imperceptible. I also touch on the challenges of public engagement. My work is heavily informed by my studies in art history. In the humanities, Western ideas of landscape are now often considered a contentious and politically fraught subject with imperialist, colonial, patriarchal, and capitalist associations. Despite this, the landscape continues to play a powerful role in visual culture. Canada's national identity has long been rooted in the representation of its landscape, especially in the works of the Group of Seven and related artists painting in the early 20th century. Supported by politicians and wealthy patrons, the Canadian style of landscape painting integrated the visual codes of the English picturesque, European Romanticism, and the American sublime into what was designed to be a distinctive representation of the northern landscape. Indeed, through this modern art form, Canada was depicted and mythologized as an empty land and a source of unlimited natural resources there for the taking. Peter Hodgins and Peter Thompson, both associate professors at Carleton University, my alma mater, describe extractive and romantic gazes through which Canadian modernity viewed nature. The extractive gaze employs imagery such as exploration, surveying, mining, settling, and harvesting. The romantic gaze is more about poetic response to the landscape and nature that disavows the destructiveness of the wealth-building endeavors of the nation. Extractive and romanticized scenes have been regularly pictured on Canadian currency since the mid-20th century, emphasizing a close relationship between the Canadian landscape and the economy. Despite growing awareness and calls of activists and Indigenous peoples, the cultural vestiges of the idealized Canadian landscape, along with our tendency not to notice slow changes in the environment, lead many to believe that everything is still okay here. Making climate change meaningful means making it relevant to everyday lives and social practices. Art goes beyond communication by providing an avenue to express our emotion, unravel complexities, and to look at problems from new perspectives. It also offers a space to process loss and fear and to imagine new social possibilities. Engaging people's hearts and minds during a pandemic presents its own challenges. Meeting with fellow artists last summer, Maria Gomez Umana told us about her initiative to explore traditional soap making. When she said her soap turned out resembling poo, we saw an opportunity in a time when hand washing was seen as the main defense against COVID-19. To make a long story short, this would give rise to a collaborative submission to Culture Days, an annual Canada-wide arts and culture festival entitled An Unexpected Intersection, Soap Meets Poop. Under the curatorial guidance of Petra Halkes, artists Maria Gomez, Umana, Rennie Price, and myself agreed to proceed with a performative installation-based event that would be held outdoors and operated under the city's COVID regulations. Despite these limitations, Petra wanted to foster conversation with audiences in a comfortable outdoor living room setting. I decided to contribute a coffee table book, exploring the intersections of soap, poop, the Ottawa urban water system, COVID-19, and climate change. While Maria demonstrated thorough hand-washing techniques using her homemade soap, participants could leaf through the plastic encased pages of my coffee table book, each wiped with sanitizer between uses. Our experience at the Culture Days event was very positive. We felt that an outdoor public venue had advantages for public engagement over traditional white box exhibitions. In the remainder of my talk, I will briefly describe my recent body of work I call Problematized Shorelines. Through it, I aim to make climate and environmental change relevant to local audiences, inviting them to ask themselves, is everything still okay here? Soap, Poop Meets the Ottawa water system, mentioned earlier, comprises a series of scenic photographs of the city's water system infrastructure and an essay presented in a coffee table book. The photos of Phase 1 were taken at the city's 2 filtration plants and 1 wastewater management facility downriver. Toying with tropes of unspoiled nature and the sublime wilderness, each image is confounded by what appears to be feces in the foreground. The obvious staging plays with the notions of constructedness and artifice in landscape art and environmental photography. At first glance, the use of soap poop, mine is modeled out of French milled soap, acrylic paint, and beeswax, adds a sense of humorous irony, but it also serves as a metaphor for the era of neo-capitalism with its unrelenting transformation of resources into consumer goods and waste despoiling the earth. Picking up litter in my neighborhood and along the shoreline on National Cleanup Day last September, I became keenly aware of the amount of plastic in the environment, including discarded masks and gloves. Also exacerbated by the pandemic, I observed that more food and other household products are being packaged in excessive amounts of plastic. I decided plastic was indeed a climate change issue and something to be confronted in my art practice. My first plastic project is entitled Untitled, Plastic Film Balls, a sculptural work inspired by an installation called Untitled Mylar by American artist Tara Donovan. I appropriated Donovan's aesthetic of plastic balls heaped in piles, but instead of new mylar, I transformed plastic film from household bags and packaging into art. The work questions the use of petroleum-based plastics with indefinite lifespans for throwaway applications. Encountering a dead gull on the shore near my home, I wondered if plastic could be a cause. My second plastic project, called Plastic Shores, is a series of colograph prints depicting dead water birds representing local species, including gulls, mallards, kingfishers, geese, cormorants, and others. The idea is not that these species face imminent extinction, but to acknowledge that they are suffering as river ecosystems come under stress from human pressure, plastic pollution, and climate change. To make the prints, I use heat-treated metallized potato chip bags to texturize the matrix and cut out the shapes of the dead birds from food packaging to produce the blank silhouettes. Once printed, I collage plastic additions cut from snack packaging to complete the picture. The absence signified by the blank silhouettes is visceral and calls to mind Maya Lin's What is Missing project, bearing witness and memorializing what would otherwise be lost and forgotten. The last artwork I will discuss is Shoreline Lost and Found, a 20-minute time-lapse video made using 15 months of daily photos. This is perhaps the most personal work in Problematized Shorelines. As the lockdown was declared March 11, 2020, I was just finishing my art history master's degree at Carleton University. Once I wrapped up my major research project and got all the requirements of graduation met, I didn't know what my next steps should be. Taking daily photographs of the shoreline from my backyard became an important part of my pandemic ritual. Using the horizon line as the through line, Shoreline Lost and Found integrates my personal anxieties as an artist, the visual variation in the daily weather, and the imperceptible changes in the climate within a repetitive landscape composition. The video also serves as a gateway project to media arts. Having worked in painting, photography, sculpture, and printmaking, I'm increasingly turning to digital media to make my artwork more accessible and more eco-friendly. In this talk, I've described my recent body of work, Problematized Shorelines, that plays with tropes of landscape and nature to unmask tendencies for aesthetic filtration and landscape amnesia. My work aims to disrupt views that everything is still okay here, so we can begin imagining ways of changing our relationships with the land, water, and all living things in a warming world. For activist artists, getting one's art into the community to promote awareness, discussion, and positive action is often more of a challenge than making the art itself. That's why I'm so glad for the opportunity to discuss my art in this venue. I look forward to your questions and engaging in discussion with other presenters and participants in the conference. We are in this together.